The actual issue behind your repeated setbacks isn't an absence of trying, it's that your undertakings are simply too large. You're going to discover a method for achieving 1% daily progress that generates the forward motion necessary to establish a consistent flow. This approach is founded on a concept known as Kaizen. The calculation is easy to grasp. Making a tiny 1% enhancement every day results in you becoming almost 38 times more effective in the span of a year. However, the initial move isn't about the arithmetic. It's a straightforward technique engineered to defeat procrastination before it can even take hold. Constructing your mind's first room. Consider this. What if the struggle to make memory skills last isn't about your brain's capacity at all? A lot of guys figure a memory palace is reserved for a special kind of individual, someone with an eidetic memory. It's this very assumption that leads them to quit. When they attempt to erect a colossal mental structure in one go, they get disoriented. The final product isn't enhanced recall, but the disheartening feeling of being stuck. But here, we employ the principle of 1% daily improvement. It converts the method of loci, a practice from 2,500 years ago, from an intimidating undertaking into a manageable means of making headway. It's not sorcery. The technique's power comes from capitalizing on your brain's inherent wiring for spatial memory, using locations you already know to store data. So dismiss any thought of a castle. Begin with a single space, your bedroom. For today, the entire assignment is just to walk through its layout in your imagination. Tomorrow, you'll mentally position one striking, outlandish visual on your bed, a gigantic wailing rooster, perhaps. The day after, you'll anchor another image to your desk. This will feel like you're accomplishing almost nothing. That is the exact reason it's so effective. This tiny step represents your 1% gain. While others burn out by trying to do too much, you are systematically incorporating one component at a time. You're not merely memorizing, you are cultivating a reliable cognitive structure. That very structure is what makes it easier to stay consistent and generate genuine momentum. Harnessing bursts of effort for lasting progress. The reason your energy depletes is your attempt to work for hours on end. You schedule a lengthy work block, believing it signifies accomplishment. Yet that's precisely why your initial burst of energy dissolves, leaving you feeling unfocused and grabbing your phone after only 60 minutes. Your method is the actual issue, not your self-discipline. Your brain is designed for short bursts of activity, yet you're compelling it to endure a marathon. A framework exists for this purpose, known as the Pomodoro Technique, which was conceived by Francesco Cirillo in the late 1980s. Its operation is uncomplicated, an intense 25-minute period of work, concluded by a required 5-minute pause. What makes this method effective where extended work periods do not succeed? Those brief intermissions are not about idleness. They function as a tactical refresh, warding off the mental exhaustion that causes you to lose your way. A cadence is established through this intermittent concentration, simplifying the act of staying engaged and generating genuine forward motion, particularly on days when you struggle to begin. Once you complete 4 of these intervals, a more substantial rest period of 15 to 30 minutes is granted for a full recovery. A formidable 4-hour job is no longer what you're up against. Instead, you are simply beginning the subsequent 25-minute segment. This is the key to transitioning from dependence on fickle inspiration to constructing a dependable framework for your attention, pulling knowledge from your mind. That feeling of accomplishment you get from going over your notes again, it's largely a deception. Highlighting a textbook can seem like you're making headway, but it fosters a misleading sense of knowing. When the moment arrives to apply that information, you discover it simply vanishes. It's not accessible. Herein lies the critical mistake so many of us make. Our concentration is on absorbing material, not on the vastly more crucial task of retrieving it. There's a concept known as active recall, which is essentially a method for compelling your mind to pull up information without prompts. What makes this so much more effective? Imagine your memory is a trail through a forest. Simply reviewing your notes is like glancing at a map of that trail.
It's effortless, but it does nothing to help you internalize the actual landscape. Active recall is the act of trekking that trail yourself, repeatedly. That sensation of difficulty when trying to recall something isn't an indication of defeat. It's the very process of you reinforcing the trail, making it easier to navigate the next time. The proof for this is concrete. A pivotal 2006 study involved students learning from written texts. One set of participants only reviewed the material. The other was given a test on it, a forced application of active recall. In an assessment conducted 5 minutes later, the review group actually performed marginally better. But what was the outcome after 1 week? The active recall participants remembered 56% of the material, whereas the review-only group could only recall 42%. Over time, that significant gap compounds. The effort spent on retrieval was clearly worth it.
So quit passively going over your material. Shut the book and recite the main ideas aloud from what you can remember. Convert your notes into a quiz and test yourself the following day. Teach the concept to a complete beginner. This is the method that cements your effort. It's the way you shift from having a surface-level acquaintance with concepts to genuinely understanding them. Blueprint for consistent daily achievement. Your most packed days frequently yield the least amount of accomplishment. You begin with enthusiasm and a massive checklist, only to find yourself feeling dispersed by midday, surrounded by numerous incomplete projects. That initial burst of momentum wanes, and when evening arrives, it seems as though nothing substantial was achieved. The problem isn't a lack of effort on your part. It's the sheer volume of tasks you're attempting to manage simultaneously. When you try to juggle an excessive number of projects, it generates a significant cognitive burden. Your mind is compelled to constantly shift gears, and this rapid refocusing is precisely what depletes your stamina and prevents you from finding a good flow. Scientific studies reveal our working memory's actual capacity is not 7 items, but closer to 3 or 4. The solution lies in structuring your schedule to honor this biological constraint. You construct your day not from a sprawling, disorganized list, but around a core foundation of only 3 main goals. For instance, this could be composing 1 report for your job, reviewing 1 chapter for a test, and completing a 30-minute workout. The aim here is not to reduce your workload, but to guarantee that the tasks you undertake are brought to completion. For this method to be effective, synchronizing these 3 goals with your body's innate energy patterns is key. The most demanding, concentration-heavy activity should be tackled first while your mind is sharpest.
Reserve the simpler, low-effort items for later, when your attention naturally diminishes. This is the way you cease to run out of momentum and begin to establish a reliable structure for consistent advancement. You're transitioning from wishing for a productive day to architecting one yourself. Mechanics of elite performance. Here's an insider's perspective. Individuals who achieve consistent success, the star student, the standout employee, seldom possess an undisclosed gift. They weren't simply endowed with superior intellect. Their primary edge comes from operating a well-defined method. This framework liberates them from depending on sheer willpower or frantic last-ditch efforts, creating a mechanism where consistent advancement is the natural outcome. This process often kicks off before the week has even started, guided by a concept borrowed from Japanese commerce called nemawashi, meaning turning the roots.
It's the straightforward practice of mapping out the week on a Sunday evening, allocating major objectives to specific days. Consider how much mental capacity you expend just figuring out what to tackle next. This single action prevents that daily decision strain, ensuring you don't feel disorganized before you've even begun. With the weekly framework established, a daily routine takes command. Numerous productive people leverage the rule of 3, choosing only 3 primary goals for the day. This limitation helps to avoid the mental exhaustion that can derail your focus. Each work period then transforms into a concentrated sprint, often employing a system like the Pomodoro Technique, a 25-minute surge of intense effort punctuated by a brief rest. These pauses aren't indulgent, they're essential for sustaining a steady pace. Furthermore, the work itself is never a passive activity. It's pure active recall, compelling your brain to summon information from memory.
This could involve making flashcards, articulating a concept out loud, or condensing a chapter entirely without looking at the source. Herein lies the distinction between merely recognizing information and genuinely mastering it. Research from the American Psychological Association validates that this practice of repeated retrieval is a fundamental pillar of successful learning. This isn't sorcery, it's a cohesive system. The plan offers the roadmap. The rule of 3 and the Pomodoro Technique supply the driving force, and active recall guarantees that your efforts translate into genuine understanding. This is the way you overcome the pattern of starting with great intensity only to lose momentum, and instead construct a machine for steady accomplishment that operates almost on its own. Vicious cycle of overload and forgetfulness. We're all aware that pulling an all-nighter to study is an ineffective strategy, yet many of us do it anyway.
The scene is familiar. Powered by stimulants, you feel the mounting strain as you log long hours. Come morning, however, the knowledge has vanished. Your focus is fragmented, your energy is depleted, and the entire endeavor seems like a waste as all your hard work has evaporated. This experience isn't a lapse in your determination, it's a physiological snare. When you attempt to learn through sheer force, the method backfires, setting off a trio of critical malfunctions within your brain's operating system. To begin with, this method generates immense mental strain. Your working memory becomes completely inundated, a condition that hinders the correct handling and long-term storage of new information. The intense pressure you experience is not an indicator of productive effort. It's a warning that your brain's memory creation mechanisms are beginning to fail under the duress. Next, the anxiety associated with cramming releases a flood of cortisol into your body.
small amount of stress can sharpen your focus, but sustained exposure to it disrupts the performance of the hippocampus, the precise region of the brain essential for creating new memories. In effect, you are actively sabotaging your brain's ability to perform the very function you're demanding of it. Finally, this intense approach almost invariably comes at the cost of sleep, which is far from simple downtime. Sleep represents the crucial interval during which your brain solidifies memories, converting them into durable, long-term knowledge. Deprived of this process, the brain's capacity for recalling new material nosedives. The scientific principle here explains the remarkable effectiveness of frameworks like the Pomodoro Technique. The anxiety from cramming harms memory, producing disappointing outcomes and heightening the impulse to cram yet again. This is the burnout loop. A system like Pomodoro offers a direct countermeasure to these physiological breakdowns. Its pattern of brief, concentrated work sessions followed by rests is not merely a stylistic choice, it's a strategic method for regulating cognitive load and reducing stress. Escaping this cycle doesn't require greater self-control. It demands a strategy that collaborates with your brain's natural architecture instead of fighting it. System: the architecture of lasting improvement. Why do we fixate on the end result, the completed novel, the career advancement, yet dedicate hardly any thought to engineering the system that leads to it? Our preoccupation with the final product, while neglecting the journey, is the fundamental explanation for why our initial enthusiasm wanes and maintaining momentum feels so challenging. Consider the automobile manufacturer Toyota. The company's triumph isn't solely defined by the vehicle itself. It's rooted in a relentless dedication to refining the construction method. This embodies a profound layer of the Japanese concept of kaizen. While we often view it as a simple 1% personal betterment, its authentic application is as a cultural framework. On the Toyota assembly line, any employee has the authority to pull a rope, the andon cord, that signals a difficulty and summons a team leader to assist in resolving it. Production halts if a swift solution isn't found. For most organizations, halting production is a catastrophe. At Toyota, however, it's viewed as a chance for improvement. This demonstrates a culture that prioritizes correcting a minor process defect over releasing a compromised item. What serves as your own andon cord? The typical reaction when you notice your energy dwindling or struggle to find a groove is to force yourself onward. We then produce a defective outcome, an unfocused exercise session, a barely absorbed page, and subsequently attribute the failure to a lack of self-discipline. This sensation of being off course is not a character flaw. It is your cue to activate the stop. Pause and pinpoint the minuscule imperfection in your method. Is there too much background noise? Does the current task demand more energy than you possess right now? Is your smartphone within easy reach? Once you correct that minor component of your system, you can resume production. Such a strategy cultivates a habit that does more than restore your momentum. It leverages points of resistance to fortify the entire process. You transition from merely pursuing an objective to constructing a personal ethos of consistent advancement. Principle of doing first. How many brilliant concepts have withered away on your task list, endlessly investigated but never brought to life? You devise the ideal strategy, consume every tutorial, and convince yourself you're productive. Yet after a week,
nothing tangible has been created. You continuously intend to begin, but you just can't seem to gain traction. The issue stems from the misconception that a flawless plan should be the initial move.
It's not. It is frequently the most elaborate type of delay. Trapped in a state of analysis paralysis, the project's original momentum simply dissipates. This is the point where you derail before the journey has even commenced. A core insight, utilized by some of the globe's most high-performing organizations, is that action itself generates information. This simple guideline is called a bias for action. This isn't a call for recklessness. It's an acknowledgement that you'll gain more knowledge from a single awkward effort than you would from 10 hours of passive study. Of course, planning is valuable, but it reaches a point of diminishing returns. The objective is to shrink the distance between a concept and its initial execution until it's nearly non-existent. Rather than investigating the optimal method for initiating a project, you take the most minimal executable step imaginable. Compose the opening sentence. Key in a single line of code. Lace up your sneakers. This principle is the mechanism that prevents you from merely contemplating momentum and instead gets the flywheel spinning. It serves as the driving force behind the other frameworks we've discussed. Active recall represents a bias for action applied to learning, while the incremental 1% advancements of Kaizen embody a bias for action in making progress. You cease getting ready to perform the task and begin allowing the task itself to be your instructor. This is the method for discovering your flow and establishing consistent advancement as your standard mode of operation.